When a player enters the depths for the first time, they're dropped into what feels like a wet, nicotine ridden lung. The constant danger of the curse. The air is as thick as the asylum demon is wide, and as another note, there's actually little music when the player ventures into the depths and instead swaps OST for the sound of wet footsteps. All in all, the depths is this biological, intestinal location full of the grotesque logic of digestion. However, before one enters the meat and bones of the depths, you must first pass through a kitchen. Not a restaurant kitchen, but a home kitchen, cramped, improvised, deeply and lovingly used despite its filthy nature. This seemingly out of place kitchen is important, at least to me, because the depths begins first and foremost by showing the player that this area was perhaps an entirely different place before its demise, as everything within the depths seems to speak to a routine. The beginning area of the depths is home to a set of butchers. In-game, they appear to be hulking, masked murderers, equipped with the fitting gear true to their name. They're dangerous enough to frighten new players, but not so overwhelming that they feel impossible, as there's only two of them, after all. On a practical level, they're a kind of skill test. Can you manage your footwork in a tight space? The various tables and pillars of the area, along with the miniature swamp underneath with the dogs galore and a narrow walkway that leads you to Laurentius, are all part of that test. If you struggle in this kitchen, the depths is going to drive you to uninstalling the game. Even more so if you're the kind of player who chooses to run straight through, adding the hollows to the mixture, creating a much more intense situation than it needs to be. However, on a symbolic level, they're far stranger, because Dark Souls' design works best when the familiar is made uncanny. A knight we understand, and a butcher we don't. Knights belong to worlds of chivalry and sprawling adventure. Butchers belong to kitchens and, well, butcher shops. They belong to towns, sustaining communities, and in turn belonging to the sustaining of families. By putting the butchers in this space, From Software created a point of reference for what the depths used to be. Without question, the environment was absolutely a once functional food network. The butchers cooked here, people, or rather travelers and journeymen, ate here. The butchers also drew in the local stray dogs due to the surplus of meat and began to take them in as pets. The butchers of the depths are what remains of that possible world, a remnant profession twisted into a newfound threat. But I think the most overlooked detail is this. The butchers are female. And when I found this out, I was overjoyed, as From Software had done it once again. The physical models of these two women are large, importantly masked, and androgynous enough that most players never question their gender, for it isn't really that important, but the detail of them being specifically female opens a different door to interpretation. One possibility is that From Software might have wanted to avoid an obvious horror trope, this hulking male serial killer archetype, so making them female adds dissonance, surprise almost. But beyond that surface layer, and perhaps the most obvious part, is that women have deep cultural associations with food, home, and care, whether we like it or not. Across many cultures, cooking and domestic work have historically been coded feminine. And as a byproduct of this history, the kitchen has been seen as a female space. So, imagine descending into the depths and finding not the same intensity as the lower undead burg, but instead you have found yourself trespassing into a kitchen, and that the most dangerous enemies in that kitchen are two women. Subjectively, From Software took the traditional image of a female-coded domestic role and they perverted it into something predatory. Instead of feeding, like the butchers might have once done, they now, well, butcher any and all who pass by, and this is directly told to us by Laurentius himself. It is the corruption of domestic life. the geography of the depths are on the underside of Firelink Shrine and the Undead Burg. It is this unseen place that once made the daily life of the Burg possible. In any living city, there must be waste systems, food systems, processing systems, and cleaning systems. In Lordran, those systems have long since rotted, and those who tended them have rotted along with them. I personally think if you look at the depths, an unsuspecting death trap in this way, those two women become symbols of a collapsed domestic structure. So, what does it mean, if it means anything at all, that Dark Souls made the choice to make those butchers female and put them in a rotting kitchen beneath one of Lordran's many cities? Although I was 11 when Dark Souls released, I think looking at these women through a 2011 telescope is probably important, as the world really was a different place just that small time ago. In the early 2010s, conversations about women's roles in both work and home life were loud and rapidly shifting. The recession had destabilized traditional domestic expectations, and all kinds of media began reimagining feminine identity in a darker, more conflicted point of view. And the British government began recognizing childcare as a real priority and understanding that parental leave needed to be shared between both mother and father. In Japan specifically, Nadeshiko Japan had won the World's Women Cup, and the unfortunate tsunami and earthquake in eastern Japan paved the way for women to play an active role in the local disaster management, as there were many women-led initiatives emerging at the community level. In 2011, it was also noted that there was a Japanese working woman problem, in which well-educated, refined, and dignified women were being subjected to domestic or secretarial roles in the workplace only due to Japanese traditional views, which prevented these women from being promoted entirely and deeming them to one low-level role until their retirement, which was leading Japanese women to seek employment in overseas countries with a more female-friendly work environment. And funnily enough, this tiny little part of Lordran seems to reflect that understanding without directly commentating on it. The female butchers are not motherly, refined, or even educated, but they are also not sexualized, and they're not caretakers at the point in time in which we meet them. But what they are, despite the flame corrupting them, are professionals. They're now newfound craftsmen of human flesh, and they are much higher on the food chain than the chosen undead by a mile. Until you swing your Zweihander, you are prey, and the only predator worth worrying about are those two women down there with you. Women in video games were shifting in 2011, and so it only makes sense that Dark Souls simply presents them as butchers, without judgment, without commentary, without an explanation. The horror of the depths isn't that women are violent. The horror is that everything domestic has been corroded, but that might not be as much of a problem as you think it to be. The depths are not frightening because it reeks of death through and through. The depths are frightening because they feel lived in, either by man or by creature. Every corner of that place suggests some kind of purpose. The butchering table, the rats feeding off of the meat, the dogs waiting for the scraps, the basilisks that punish mindless wandering, the water that runs past your feet and sustains the swamp of Blighttown, and the giant ravine gives the gaping dragon a place to rest. It's familiarity inverted, and that's where that sense of dread comes from. Domestic horror works because a city is supposed to be quote-unquote safe. A kitchen, communal or homely, is supposed to be safe. The sewer beneath that city is supposed to carry the waste away out of sight, and when we're forced to wade through it, we confront all of the things that a community hides. In that sense, the depths is not a dungeon, it's a metaphor for everything that Lordran, especially the Lordran above, perhaps doesn't want you to see. Saying this, I don't think it's a moral statement about femininity. I think it's a narrative statement about the much needed shift on what it meant to be a woman in the slow erosion of routine. One of the strangest qualities of these butcher enemies is just how human they are in comparison to the area in which they exist. They aren't shapeless slimes or mythic creatures. At their very core, they are just women. The basilisks and the slimes, Seath's channeler with its magic, and the literal dragon. These are your threats. The butchers are something else, and something much more understandable. In that sense, the fact that they are women complicates their humanity. From Software, unfortunately, does have a habit of restricting Dark Souls women to mother, daughter, lover, healer, but the Butcher refuses each and every one of these ideas, even in From Software's terms. Of course, players kill these butchers, and some players never think about them ever again, and the Depths is gone with the wind. A short segment in a huge game, forgotten once Blighttown begins. But the game leaves us with an image. The Depths is a possibly gendered space, stripped to the bone and perverted to a now dangerous place. It's important to stress that this reading, as I always do stress, is entirely subjective. From Software rarely explains its symbolism directly. The butchers may be female simply because the developers found it interesting, or maybe because they believe that is where women belong, and so only a woman can be in a kitchen. But games don't need explicit intention to carry meaning, especially in a Dark Souls game. Game design reflects the time that they were built in, whether intentionally or not, whether in a good way or a bad way. When we think about the Depths, we tend to remember the Gaping Dragon boss fight as well, it's the Gaping Dragon. And we remember the slimes falling from the ceiling and thinking, what the hell are those things? We remember getting cursed by the basilisks and not knowing how to get rid of the curse. But the real heart of the Depths are those two women who sit at the beginning of it, and the two women who feed those very same slimes, rats, basilisks, and dogs. That's the tragedy of the Depths, I think. Not that the Depths is dark or curse-ridden, but that the Depths was once necessary to the entirety of the Burg. Dark Souls doesn't give us easy answers. It gives us a kitchen flooded with sewage and asks us to think about who cooked there and why the women turned into cannibals. As I always say, Dark Souls showcases many lessons unto the player, and I think that the lesson of the Depths is that everything dies, even the mundane, especially the mundane. Until next time, praise the sun, and if you're a man, remember you are never too far away from a possible cannibal.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.